We were 8 weeks into the 1995 season, and maybe no team in football had it worse than this team right here, the Detroit Lions. The expectations for head coach Wayne Fontes in his 8th season with the organization were, in no uncertain terms, playoffs or bust. For years, it seemed as though every time Fontes was on the hot seat, he was able to weasel himself out of the jam and somehow get the Lions to go on a run, or somehow get the Lions to win a game that they had no business winning, which would save his job by another week and then another year. But now, after 8 weeks in 1995, his time was running out. The Lions were 2-5, with only the New Orleans Saints having fewer wins at this point than Detroit had. And the Lions were dead last in the Central, with 3 teams in the division already having at least 5 wins. The Wayne Fontes magic was running out, and their most recent loss, an overtime defeat to Washington off of a pick 6 and a fourth-quarter choke job, might have been the worst loss of the bunch. Combine that with having a bottom 5 defense in the conference, with a defense that had allowed 20 or more points in all 7 games thus far, and the Wayne Fontes experiment was finally going to come to an end, barring anything crazy. So let me give you this scenario if you're this man right here. You know that you need to win this next game or you're fired. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You are going to be canned if you lose your next game to the Green Bay Packers, drop to 4 games back of the division lead, and drop to 2-6 at the midway point, losing to the team that eliminated you from the playoffs last year. You are on the hottest of hot seats. The first half comes and goes, and you're in the lead, playing your best football of the year, and looking like you're going to hold on to your job and live another day. Then, the NFL comes in and says that what you're doing is 100% illegal. You are breaking the rules, you are violating league-wide protocol, and I don't know why you're doing this, but you need to change what you're doing right now, because we're not happy with you. What do? Do you comply with the rules and risk the possibility that you could be fired and your team could lose the game? Or do you bite the bullet and continue violating the rules, risking massive fines and penalties in the process? Do you mess with a winning formula, even if the winning formula is illegal? Well, during Week 9 of the 1995 NFL season, that's exactly the dilemma that Wayne Fontes had to deal with, though not in the way that you might expect. Because it wasn't as if Fontes was breaking the rules by illegally playing someone, or by placing a bounty on the Packer players, or by bribing the referees. He was breaking the rules by committing a wardrobe malfunction. Seriously. It's a story so bizarre that deserves a deep dive more than 3 decades later. Because this is the story behind Wayne Fontes, and what might just be, considering the circumstances, the weirdest wardrobe malfunction in NFL history. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, hype up that video, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. Because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL with stories like this one they may not have heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is definitely the place for you. Thanks in advance for liking and subscribing, and for hyping up the video, and for helping us grow this community. And with that in mind, let's talk about the time that Wayne Fontes tried to win a football game at the expense of his wallet. Now, normally, I talk about the context beforehand, but we really don't need that here. We're just jumping straight into the game at the Silverdome between the Lions and the Packers, with the Packers having defeated the Lions just 2 weeks prior at Lambeau Field by a final score of 30-21, in a game that wasn't exactly as close as the final score may indicate, seeing as the Packers led it 20-0 at the halftime break. Amazingly enough, even despite all of that, the Lions were favored to beat the Packers in Week 9, despite the fact that the Packers won the first meeting, despite the fact that the Packers were 5-2, and were looking like one of the best teams in football, and despite the fact that the Lions were 2-5 and looked lifeless defensively. I guess Vegas oddsmakers heard the news about Fonts likely getting canned if the Lions lost this game, and knew that when Fonts was on the hot seat, that the Lions were better than the 72 Dolphins and the 85 Bears combined. And sure enough, the odds makers were right, as after the first half, it was all Detroit, with the Lions leading the game 21-10 thanks to a hat trick of touchdown passes by Scott Mitchell to Herman Moore. Herman Moore might be the most underrated and forgotten receiver of the 1990s relative to how good he was, and games like this were a prime example of why, as in a career year for him, he had arguably his best game of the season, recording 6 catches for 147 yards and 3 touchdowns, and basically putting up that production in the first half. The Lions defense, which had been much maligned all season, and for good reason, was stout in the first half, forcing Brett Favre to throw 3 interceptions. Keep in mind that Favre would finish the season as the league leader in passing yards and passing touchdowns, and would win the first of his record-setting 3 MVP awards during this season. So for the Lions of all teams to give him his worst half of the year was impressive. The 3 MVPs were consecutive, which makes it that much more impressive. No one else will ever win more than 3 consecutive MVP awards. So for the Lions to shut him down was impressive. Barry Sanders was being Barry Sanders as always, as he finished the game with 167 yards on 7.6 yards per carry, with some big runs in the first half to help keep drives going or start drives off on the right foot. All in all, the Lions were playing really good football. It was easily their best half of the season, as it was a complete effort in every phase. As this man right here, Wayne Fonts, was going into the locker room at halftime, it seemed like nothing could stop him. And then he got the call from the NFL, because the league office was not happy with him whatsoever, and in no uncertain terms, called up Detroit and asked them, "What the hell are you guys doing?" And no, I'm not talking about the fact that the Lions were winning. I'm not talking about the NFL being rigged in favor of the Packers and the Lions weren't going along with the script. I'm talking about what Wayne Fonts was wearing on the sidelines. You might be looking at Fonts in these clips and wondering what the heck the problem could possibly be. He's fully clothed and he's not exposing any body parts that are too risque for television. What's the issue? Well, let's show a side-by-side of what Wayne Fonts wore for this game against the Packers and what he wore back in Week 1 during the team's opening day game on September 3rd against the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's time to play a game of finding the differences between the 2 photos. Obviously, one of these is a sweater, and the other is a very 90s looking polo. One of these has a much lighter shade of blue than the other. One of these has the Lions logo on it, and one of these has Lions written on it. One of these is short-sleeved, one of these is long-sleeved. One of these has stripes, and one of these is a solid color. If you got all those, congratulations, you're probably not a 3-year-old. So I'm not talking about those differences. Look closely, like really closely, and see if you can spot the problem. Well, in case you have no idea what I'm talking about, or your eyes are tired and want to give up, let me zoom in. This is what Fonts wore on opening day. The polo shirt he's wearing, that's Reebok. The sweater he's wearing for the Packers game, that's the subject of the video, that is not Reebok. In fact, that's not a secondary brand or subsidiary of Reebok either. That's Antigua, as in an entirely different company. And that's a problem when you're on the sidelines of an NFL game in front of millions of people and the NFL has a deal with Reebok and the Lions have an exclusive licensing deal with Reebok where you can only wear Reebok on the sidelines. Which raises the question, how did this even happen? How and why did Wayne Fontes decide to not wear Reebok apparel on the sideline? Well, Reebok doesn't make sweaters, but Antigua does. And the Silverdome around this time of year was in that weird gray area when it came to how warm the building was. Wear the short sleeve Reebok shirt and wear the polo, and you'll be freezing. Wear a Reebok jacket, however, and you'll be sweating like a madman. The sweater was the Goldilocks of options. Not as light as a polo, not as heavy as a jacket. The problem is that, obviously, this isn't Reebok apparel, and Fontes have been shown repeatedly on the broadcast walking up and down the sidelines with the Antigua lettering on the sweater being visible, being in direct violation of the deal that Reebok made with the NFL and the Lions. So when Fontes got the call, you would think it would be as simple as saying, "Oh crap, I didn't even realize that. I'm so sorry, let me change right now." However, Wayne Fontes knew that his job was on the line. He knew that if the Lions lost this game, that he'd be fired. He knew that you never mess up a winning formula. And yeah, I guess you could say that he was a little superstitious, because he was legitimately worried that if he switched out of his Antigua sweater, despite the sweater being in direct violation of the very strict uniform code that the league has, that all of the positive momentum and good vibes that the Lions had would be destroyed. The only reason the Lions were in front was because of this Antigua sweater, and Fontes wasn't about to change that. As Fontes said about what happened at halftime, it was too cold to wear the shirt. It was too hot to wear the jacket. We were leading. So if the Lions weren't playing their best football, or did anything besides play their best half of the season, Fontes probably done something else that's a Reebok product on the sideline. But because he didn't want to tempt fate, he wasn't going to change sweaters. You were going to have to yank that sweater off of his body, which, to be fair, I think the NFL would have done that, seeing as this is a league that's fined players in the past for wearing their socks too high, for having parts of their uniform untucked, and one time fined former MVP kicker Mark Mosley for having a hole in his sock. So what did Fontes decide to do? I kid you not, the trainer of the Lions put a piece of tape over the Antigua lettering. You can even see it during the second half if you pay close enough attention. Here's a side-by-side comparison. The first half is on the left, and the Antigua lettering is as clear as day. The second half is on the right, and it's just covered up by some tape. There were multiple parts of the sweater that had Antigua on it. He covered all of them up. It was a fair compromise in the eyes of Fontes. I'm not going to remove my sweater, because we're winning right now, and I'm comfortable in it. But I'll comply with the uniform rules as best I can, which, spoiler alert, to the shock of no one, still resulted in him getting a heavy fine from the league and a sternly worded letter from Reebok reminding him that, hey, we signed a contract and you have to wear Reebok apparel on the sideline as a part of it. As Fontes said after the game on everything that went down, I just forgot. And when we got the lead, I wasn't going to change it. You can't believe the calls I got. You can't believe the fines I got. I guess it was all worth it in the end, though, as the Lions held on, winning this game right here by a final score of 24-16 to improve to 3-5. And whatever money Fontes lost in fines from this wardrobe malfunction was likely negligible compared to what he gained as a result, as somehow the Lions did it again, because they seemed to be the greatest team of all time when their backs were against the wall and Wayne Fontes was on the hot seat. After starting the season 2-5, the Lions won 8 of their final 9 games, finishing with a 10-6 record and advancing to the playoffs for the 3rd straight season and for the 4th time in the last 5 years, giving Fonts yet another year as the team's head coach. If you don't believe in superstitions, then of course, you think this is freaking stupid. If you believe in superstitions and not messing up a winning formula, no matter how insane or irrelevant it might seem, you might think that Fonts saved his job in the Lions season by accidentally wearing an Antigua sweater on the sideline instead of a Reebok shirt, and by refusing to change it even when pressured by league officials and Reebok officials to do so. How you view this story is entirely dependent on your view of superstitions and whether you're the kind of person who will sit in the same spot on the couch for every game because it brings good vibes, or what jersey you'll wear, and if that jersey loses 2 games in a row, you never wear that again. Regardless, if you're a coach watching this video for whatever reason, here's a word to the wise. The NFL has a contract with an apparel company. The apparel company is paying the league probably somewhere along the lines of billions of dollars to have their apparel be worn. Forget millions, we're talking billions with a B. Don't break the contract. Unless you want to become the first coach to get the guillotine and go 9 figures in debt with fines, do not take off the NFL and the companies that are forking out the money to make this all possible. In other words, don't wear an Antigua sweater if your contract says you have to wear Reebok. Because if you tried this today and tried wearing an Antigua sweater on the sidelines, the NFL may personally have you walk the plank in the waters of Antigua. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name of the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.